Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you could join us to our first information session of a series of info sessions that we put together to support your application this year for round 2 of funding to the CJC. I'm Sarah Spring, the Executive Director.
Thanks.
Laura.
Yeah. And I'm Laura, Program Director, and really happy to be here and help answer any questions that you might have following the presentation.
And hi, everyone. I'm Gina Badger. I'm the Operations Manager. So welcome and thanks for being here.
So the three of us are going to step back in the background while Gabrielle leads the session, but we'll be around after to support the Q&A.
Okay. So hello everyone again. My name is Gabrielle Brassard-Lecourt and I'm the Media Community Director at the CJC-CCJ. I'm very pleased to host this information session today, and thank you for being here. Before we start, 2 technical points. So as you probably saw, this session will be recorded for those who can't be here today. And we will make this information session available to you to go back to it after it's done. So we will post it on our website. Also, there will be a questions period at the end of this presentation. If you wish to ask questions at any time, you can use the Q&A box that's on the screen at the bottom of the screen, and we'll address them when we get there in the presentation. So again, thank you.
I just want to ask, Gab, I think you need to reshare your screen now that we've started the webinar.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm able to see it.
Yeah, it says that it's sharing, so I'm not sure. You can see it, Sarah, or?
I can't see it, but maybe someone could just put in the chat that they can see your screen, and just to confirm.
Yeah, it looks like folks are saying they can see the slides. So I think you're free to keep going, Gabrielle. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Okay, so this is what we are going to speak about today. So who we are, update, most recent update, the eligibility policy, so recap and changes that we made for the second round of funding, the calculation and payment policy, recap and changes again. And then we will talk about the workflow and the timeline, and there will be questions. We have already prepared a frequently asked questions section, so maybe your question will be answered then, but again, don't hesitate if you have questions in the Q&A box. So who we are and what we do. So the Canadian Journalism Collective is an independent organization created in 2024 by and for Canadian news businesses to ensure fair and equitable distribution of 100 million annually from Google to news organizations across the country. Born from Canada's groundbreaking Online News Act, we exist to support publishers and broadcasters from across the country, from independent local outlets to major networks, Indigenous news organizations, and official language minority media. The Online News Act aims to ensure that dominant platforms compensate news businesses when their content is made available on their service. And so a word on the Act also. So the Act creates a bargaining framework to ensure that platforms compensate news businesses fairly. It encourages platforms to reach voluntary commercial agreements with a range of news businesses. The Act received royal assent on June 22nd, 2023. The Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, the CRTC, is responsible for overseeing the bargaining framework under the Act. It is under this framework that the CRTC gave their exemption to Google, and that the CJC was mandated to administer the fund by Google. So updates and next step. This is a summary of the summer update that we sent earlier this August. So far, we have distributed $58 million to over 400 news businesses across the country. So for the second year of funding, we have an improved application process timeline. So we have put in place a secure online application portal with individual logins. So you will be able to see where is your dossier and what the step is. The eligibility verification and eligible hours review will take place at the same time. So not like now that the auditing hours are later, those two steps will happen at the same times. All eligibility decision, eligible and ineligible, will be sent at the same time also. So we will really fast track the process. Contrary also to this year, there will be only one single payment per successful applicant, and this payment will be made during the winter of 2026. There will also be a clear and timely appeal process for ineligible applicants that we will be communicating soon. So next steps and important dates. So the review of eligible newsroom hours by Ernst & Young is happening now, as you might know, and it's almost done, meaning that the final settlement year one payment will happen in September. So pretty much in the next week or so. The application portal for settlement year two for non-Indigenous applicants will open on September 9th until October 3. So you will have several weeks to fill it in. The application portal for settlement year two for Indigenous applicants will open on September 16 until October 16, 2025. And the payments for year two will be disbursed in winter 2026, like we previously said. So on the publisher eligibility policy for the year two, so the highlights, which were already in the first year. So eligible categories for publishers will be QCJO statuses, Indigenous news businesses, producers of news content of public interest. So this is if you don't have a QCJO status. And the effective dates will be January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024. So we are compensating the year 2024. This is important. So the change is that if you have QCJO status and your content is indexed on Google, you will automatically be eligible to receive funds without further verification. So you will be asked to provide a letter from the Canada Revenue Agency proving that you have been designated as a qualified Canadian journalism organization, and also prove that your content is made available on Google. The other change that was made is that the definition for what regularly employing two journalists mean has been clarified for businesses that are applying under the producers of news content of public interest category. So employees can be employed part-time or full-time as long as they were on payroll at some point in 2024 and received a T4. So the news business must regularly employ two or more journalists in Canada which may include journalists who own, who are a partner in the news business, and journalists who do not deal at arm's length with the business. So regularly employed refers to the regular and continuous employment of a journalist, either full-time or part-time, like we said, even if the position is temporarily unoccupied, whereby a T4 is issued for the employee. Freelance journalists do not meet the condition of being regularly employed because they are not employees. And finally, the other change that we made is on the content submitted. So instead of the CJC verification team reviewing randomly selected content from news businesses' website, applicants, so you, will select the news content you want the CJC to review over a continuous 3-week period. So you will be asked to provide a link to each news item to be considered by the CJC. And so you will have to submit all the news content in the 3-week period that you choose. If your news business content is in a language other than English or French, applicants must submit translated excerpts of your news content when applying. This is on the eligibility policy. For the publisher payment calculation policy, highlights are that you have to choose between applying as a broadcaster or a publisher. So, for example, if your news business distributes its content, whether written, audio, or video, exclusively online or in print, and you do not transmit programs by television or radio waves, not indirectly through a distribution undertaking as defined in the broadcasting payment calculation policy, you should apply as a publisher. For example, podcasting and streaming news businesses that distribute their content online should apply as publisher. And the calculation is based on eligible newsroom employees. This is also a change that we will get into more in depth in the next slide. So how to determine the number of eligible newsroom employees in 2024? So the change is that the payment calculation is now based on the head count of the numbers of employees receiving T4s rather than hours worked by the employees. And another change that was made is tasks that qualify as original news production. So some tasks have been removed from the list of tasks that qualify. And the task that was removed is promotion and engagement. So hours were dedicated to taking care of social media, for example, or on your website will not be eligible. And so on the calculation, I will show you excerpts of the policy that you can find in the resource part of our website. But here is an example that will help you understand. So again, how to determine the number of eligible newsroom, you see it. So for example, you calculate the hours. So example 1, an employee worked 35 hours a week or more, all of 2024, including vacation. So this employee should be counted as one eligible newsroom employee. So you have another example here. So an employee works less hours, so 780 hours a year. They are considered to be 0.75 eligible newsroom employee. And then the list goes on like this. I will show you the rest. So this is example 1. Here you have example 2. An employee worked at 26 hours a week. So this employee is considered 0.75 as an eligible newsroom employee. And you have the other examples here. So example 3, an employee worked 13 hours per week. So this employee should be counted as 0.5, an eligible news employee, and same thing as the hours go down. So you can make the calculus, but you have all those examples again in the calculation policy on our website. So here is a reminder of the tasks that qualify as original news production. So news gatherings, and we will come back to this more in detail, but when we talk about news gathering, it's not rewriting, it has to be produced originally for the publication. So not repurposing, not rewriting of an existing news, but we will talk about it later. So publishing and distribution, post-publication, story development, verification and fact-checking, filming, writing, and editing for maybe more broadcasting and production, approval and review. Tasks that do not qualify as original news production, so promotion and engagement, this is the change from last year, content aggregation, expression of personal viewpoints, advertorial content, legal review, and archiving. So we have prepared a frequently asked questions section. So am I eligible if my journalists are freelancers and not employees? So hours for freelancers are not eligible. So again, by regularly employed, we mean employees who are issued T4 and who are on the payroll. And you need to have 2 journalists on the payroll to be eligible for funding. Are volunteers eligible? No, they are not. Are owners' hours eligible? They are if the owner's tasks are contributing to the production of original and general interest news. What if my publication is only in PDF format? So the news content produced by the news business must be made available on Google. So if your PDF is, then you are eligible. But if your PDF is not discoverable through Google's search engine, then you are not. My content is not in English or in French. So in the portal application, you will be asked to provide some translated transcripts of your content. But also our verification team speak English, French, Arabic, and Mandarin. So we have verification agents that speak several languages, but you must also provide translated transcripts so that the verification is able to evaluate your eligibility. So what is considered general news? So the news content must not be focused on a particular topic, such as industry-specific news, sports, recreation, arts, lifestyle, or entertainment. It must also not be intended to promote the interests or report on the activities of an organization, an association, or its members. So the term original news content includes content for which research, writing, editing, and formatting are conducted by and for the organization. Therefore, whether news content is original depends on the active involvement of a journalist in its creation. So original news content is produced through gathering facts and should show evidence of first-hand reporting, such as independent research, interviews, and fieldwork. So for example, a news article or report about an event would be original if it is written or reported by a journalist and is based on first-hand knowledge that the journalist gained by conducted independent research, attending or witnessing the event, or interviewing people who organized, attended, or witnessed the event. So What do I determine? How do I determine what part of my business is a news outlet if you don't only do that? So it's the part of the website where news is published that's considered to be the news outlet. And I will show you details also in the next slides. So a news business may run several outlets, not all of which would be eligible to participate in the bargaining framework. So for example, let's say an individual owns and operates a local news website in a small town in Manitoba that covers town politics and other news of interest in the community. The owner writes stories for the publication along with one local employee who is a full-time journalist. The employer also earns a salary for their work on the publication, allowing the news business to fulfill the criterion of regularly employing 2 journalists. The articles the 2 employees write adhere to the ethics guidelines published by the Canadian Association of Journalists. This is an example. Well, then these characteristics together would allows the news business to be eligible for funding. However, if the same Manitoba publisher also operate a website that was focused primarily on industry developments in the renewable energy sector, that particular outlet would not be eligible to participate in the framework. This news business could still participate, but only on behalf of the first outlet, so the local news website. Any full-time equivalent journalist, regularly employed, considered for the purposes of compensation could only be counted for the first outlet. And I will show you this later. Are LJI hours eligible? Yes, they are. Again, if the journalist under LJI is on the payroll. How does it work if I have several outlets? It's the outlet that delivers the T4 that has to apply for funding with all their eligible hours for all the outlet that they manage. One application, so you will be asked to provide all the content in the same application, and I will show you this in the next slide. So you have a scoop today. We are showing you a preview of what the portal application will look how it's gonna look. So this is really a premiere, so you're very lucky. So again, this is the portal that will open on September 9th. But we just wanted to show you some part of it so you understand better what we mean with those questions. So sorry, it's a little small because it's a screenshot, but for example, if you have several outlets, you have to specify the name, and then you will be asked a bunch of questions. So how you're distributed, the language, there. And the second part, you will be asked to provide all of your links of content here. And then you will have to describe the numbers of hours. And a news content verification. So this will be, so this is the part where only if one part of your outlet is doing news, you can choose it. So online publication is the website where news is published, magazine, radio station, television station, and then you will be asked how many news outlet does your business operate. So this is how it's going to look. So workflow and timeline. So again, application portal will open for non-Indigenous applicants on September 9th, and it will close on October 3rd. For the Indigenous applicants, the portal will open on September 16th, and oh, sorry, I made a mistake there. It's gonna close on October 16th, so a month. right when applications will start, the verification team will start evaluating eligibility. So this will be, faster also than year one, because we are not going to wait until everyone has applied. We are going to fast track this process. Also, at the same time, the verification of employee hours will begin. So again, Ernst & Young will be in contact with you, and we will let you know how the process is going to be, how it's going to go on, but it's going to be at the same time. Then eligible and ineligible determination letters will be sent, again, all at the same time. And the dispute process will happen for the ineligible applicants who want to go through this process. And one payment to everyone who's eligible will happen in winter of 2026. So here's the team. We are easily found on the website in the About section. So, but just a resume here. So Sarah Spring, that you've met at the beginning of the session. She's the Executive Director. Laura Dunn, Program Director. Myself, Gina Badger, the Operation Manager, and Hugo Prévost, who will manage the verification team. And so that completes my part. So now, if you have questions, now is the time.
Okay, so Gabrielle, there was some questions that came in during the presentation, and some of them we answered as we went, but there's some that I think require sort of a larger explanation. So I'll ask these one at a time. So there was a question about will the reduction in categories and fewer qualified journalist employees, will the equivalent annual rate per full-time employee increase in year two? So maybe just explaining a bit about the ratio question.
You mean is the amount per journalist going to be higher? Is that the question, or?
Yeah.
I don't think we can, and Sarah, you can correct me, but I don't think we know now, because it mostly depends on how many news businesses apply. So it might be less or more than year one. So depending on how many news businesses apply and are eligible, then after we will be more able to say what will be the amount. I don't know if that answers me.
Yeah, Laura, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think like for projections, it's good to estimate that it'll be about the same. And then if it happens to be over, I think that would be good news for everyone.
Yeah, but it's hard to say at that time, because we really don't know how many people, I mean, yeah, will apply. So.
Okay, great. And so there's another question. There's numerous news sites with unique news content. When they submit links to the content, can they include website links, or do you want a separate link to every story published over the 3-week period in 2024?
That's a very good question. So it's a link per content. So we don't want links to your website, because you choose the period with all the news content. So it needs to be one link per individual news content with a maximum of 100.
I saw in the question that you mentioned that you own numerous news sites. So like you have 3 different news websites, and they're owned, I'm assuming, by the same news business. And so in the application, there's actually a section where you list each of the news outlets that you own. And under that section for that news outlet, that's where you provide the links. So, if you have Banana Weekly, then you provide one link for each piece of content produced during that 3-week period that you choose. And of course, we recommend that you choose a period in the year when you're producing lots of news. And then if you also have like Orange Daily, then provide, up to 100 links that would cover all the content produced on Orange Daily over that 3-week period. And that way we can get a sense of what the range of your content is, and make sure that it's original news. And yeah, that's a change in the process for this year.
Okay, thanks. And Gabrielle, can you repeat the timeline that you mentioned between now and winter 2026? There's a question about what's the timeline for being notified?
Notified about what step?
Eligibility.
Well, it's true now. So if we go back to this line here, so the portal will open on September 9th. Verification will start right away. We will wait until everyone is verified because we are going to send the eligible letters all at the same times, which we are aiming to do, I think, early 2026, I'm guessing. Sarah, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll jump in actually. So our timeline that we've set up is that at the end of 2025, that everyone would receive their letters letting them know if they're eligible or ineligible for funding. At which point anyone who's deemed ineligible would be able to file a dispute. The councils would then meet in early 2026 to resolve the disputes. At that point, we would then have the final amounts that everyone would be receiving who is eligible for funding out of the second compensation year.
Yeah, and if I can just add, we are planning this timeline also because we are receiving the second 100 million from Google at the end of the year. So like last year was between Christmas and New Year's Eve. Hopefully it won't be, it'll be a bit earlier this year. But so we're doing all this process so that as soon as we receive the money, it can go out in early 2026. Do we have other questions?
Yeah. So, okay. So there's some questions about LJI, and I wonder if you can just mention, that they are included and why.
So LJI is included because it reflects what is in the act actually, which says that, and one big part of the act is fair distribution and encouraging small local news businesses that we know rely a lot on journalists that are LGI to be able to meet the criteria to be eligible for funding. So we know that several publications have, for example, the owner as one full-time employee or regularly employee, and their LGI too. So if we were gonna take out the LGI, then it would discriminate a lot of smaller and independent outlets.
Okay, and there's a question that we have over 100 news websites. Do you want 100 articles for each of these sites?
So the 100 is a limit, but you can totally choose to to upload less than. So we put this limit mostly for like bigger outlets who do a lot of like daily news, because we don't expect, of course, all the smaller publications who have 100 links over a period of 3 weeks. So this is really like a top, but you can really choose the number of links you want to submit.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, we're asking for the news that's produced over a 3-week period. So if you're producing 100 links, you submit 100, but we're asking for all the news that's produced to get a sense of how that compares with the number of journalists that you've employed. And there's a question about redacting T4s, and maybe I'll answer that one. So the firm that's assessing the hours, Ernst & Young, they're not allowed to receive personal information about the employees. So that is a legal question where they're redacting personal information, and that's why you've been asked to do that. I have a question. If an outlet is registered under QCJO, is there any other action we need to take when the portal opens on September 9th, or are we automatically submitted?
So, like I said earlier in the presentation, the only thing that you will be asked to provide is a proof that you are QCJO, so RCA, CRA letter, so proof of your status and proof that you're indexed on Google, and that's it for QCJOs.
Okay, another question. We're primarily a digital news content publisher, but also produce a quarterly print magazine under the same name. Are we considered one outlet or two? Laura, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think if your quarterly print magazine doesn't put content online, it wouldn't be considered a relevant news outlet because we can only look at content that's made available by Google. So that's just the bigger context. If it is available online, then I would say there are two different news outlets. One is the print and one is the online, and we would need to see like separate links for the print publication and over a 3-week period, the same as any other news outlet. But if the print publication is only print, then we wouldn't be able to consider it. Thanks.
Okay, another question. You mentioned 58 million was dispersed out of 100 million. Is the remainder allocated for round one or brought forward? So yeah, just to clarify that point. So exceptionally in the first year, there's two payments. So there was an initial payment of 60% of what applicants were estimated to receive based on the numbers that they submitted. And the second payment is following the assessment of hours. So Gabrielle mentioned that the hours assessment by Ernst & Young is happening now. They're almost finished. When that's done, we'll be able to make the second payment. So that's happening at the end of September. So later on this month. And so by the end, we will have dispersed the 100 million minus the operating expenses of the CJC. So every year we're going to be dispersing estimated at $98 million. And we're administering two funding rounds in one calendar year this year, but moving forward, it'll just be one fund administration per calendar year. But we're always going to be dispersing the same total amount of money. Okay, so there's a question about social media posting, engagement, and marketing. So the hours dedicated to these tasks are no longer eligible. Could you say something about why that is? Maybe Laura, you can talk about that one.
Yeah, so I think the concern and kind of like the feedback that we got from the community was that these are tasks that aren't necessarily core to journalism, and so they shouldn't be included. And so we made that adjustment in response to that feedback. And yeah, I think that's kind of like the big picture answer. There's also potential inequality between huge newsrooms that have huge social media teams and can claim multiple roles around that versus smaller outlets that might only be able to have like a tiny portion of their time dedicated to social media. So that was some of the thinking around that.
Okay, and we've got a question about QCJO, and I know this is, this is a big change. So for someone that is currently holding an official letter from the Canada Revenue Agency that you are QCJO, you submit that when you apply. If your application is in process, it doesn't mean that you're not eligible for funding. It just means that you're not going to submit as QCJO. So likely when you apply, you'll be checking the selection of a news producer of content of public interest. And you will be asked if you have applied for QCJO, and you can have the opportunity to answer yes, and that your application is in process. But you're not penalized in any way. It just means that you're not automatically eligible should your content be available on Google. There's a question about the formula and how to calculate everyone's employee count. So yeah, I really encourage everyone to look on our website in the resources page. You'll see a pretty detailed calculation of how you come at the one employee, 0.75, 0.5, 0.25. And if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out. There's a question, are we to upload PDFs of the articles from the 3-week period, or links to the articles, or both?
So it's links, because again, it has to be indexed on Google. I mean, I guess if your PDF is available on Google, but ideally it would be more direct links to your content, because PDF is not ideal. We have to open it and everything. It would so links directly to your content.
And we would ask for PDFs if your content is not in English or French, then you'll be able to upload translation. And just to be clear, we're just looking for, it doesn't have to be professionally translated. You can use, artificial assistance as needed. It's really just for the verification team to be able to assess the news content and to confirm that there's a journalist that wrote it. There's a question, does the work of all the journalists you're applying for need to be included in the 3 weeks you pick? If so, if someone is off for a month and doesn't publish an article during that time, would they be deemed ineligible? So maybe just to differentiate, Gab, between the assessment of the news and the employee hours submitted.
Yeah, so the 3-week period is only for content. So it's not related to your journal. Well, I mean, it's related in the way that the journalists have to be producing news, but the hours you declare are annually for all the year of 2024. So it's different from content verification. So there's like 2 big things. There's the employee verification hours and the content. So content is over the 3 week, and employees is over a year. So.
And just to confirm, 3 weeks, there's a question about if it's any 3 weeks, or is it 3 weeks from 2024?
It's any 3 weeks in 2024. So from the date that we said at the beginning, which are again the December 1st to January 31st of 2024.
January to this.
Yeah, January to December. So any 3 weeks within this year, the 2024 year.
Okay. There's a question, would a link to a digital version of the print publication count towards the separate news outlet? Our quarterly magazine is available on issue as a flip book. Some of the news stories are not pulled out and create a separate news story. Laura, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I was gonna.
So I'm just understanding, so you have a print publication and some of the stories in the print publication are not available online. And
yeah.
And so the question is that then are those print stories distributed through Google? So if they're in issue, when you take the headline of the story that's not on your website, and you search it in Google, does it come up? If the headline doesn't come up, then I think we would consider that it's not made available by Google. And so then you wouldn't be able to count that as an outlet. But if it does, I don't want to make the decision for you. And of course you can submit it, and the verification team will review. And if we determine that it's not available on Google, then that would be the next step. But that's really the criteria, is that it has to be available on Google.
And with that individually available, right? Because if it's just your flip thing with all of your content, it's not enough. It has to be, like Laura said, we have to be able to individually find the headline that links to the story online.
Exactly. And so what we found is that it varies a lot. Some PDFs, if you search the headline in a Google search, even though the headline is deep in the PDF, it comes up. And some PDFs, we're looking for the headline of the news story and we Google search it, put it in quotation marks, and it never comes up. And so then we consider that it's not available on Google. And so ideally, we're not going to make that call for you, but then in the assessment phase, we would have to discount any of the links that we find that we can't verify as being available on Google.
And there's a question about the news outlet operates under several connected corporations. Can we submit all employees on T4s in the connected corporations, even though it does not match the news outlet name technically? So I think this is a question about a news business that has multiple outlets, or if there's multiple news businesses that share employees. So maybe you can address both of those options.
Yeah, Laura, do you want to, I'm not sure how to, because I think in the portal, you will be asked the name of your operating outlet and then all the other one that operates under it. And if you share resources, it has to be, yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at the question itself, and it's a question from Dorothy.
Exactly.
And so this is a news outlet that operates under several connected corporations. Can we submit all employees on T4 in the connected corporations, even though it doesn't match the outlet name technically? I think we'd need to get back to you with like a more detailed answer. But I think what we're trying to be careful about is that just making sure that we're being fair to everyone and that we're not accidentally allowing folks to double count employees. And so, we want to take everyone in good faith and we want to be careful. So I think we could get back to you.
Yeah, because basically the news business is employing, the news business has perhaps a number of outlets, but we're looking at that news business is the one paying the employee. So really you have to go back to where's the payroll coming from? And that's the applicant. And then they're filling in information for the multiple outlets. But yeah, I agree. We can have maybe a longer discussion about that on email. Okay, and there's a question about the letter from the Canada Revenue Agency. So this is really the Canada Revenue Agency deems a news organization as a QCJO. So that is not a designation that the CJC provides, but if the Canada Revenue Agency does go through the process and deems a news business qualified journalistic association, that allows a simpler process when they're applying for CJC funding. So it's a completely different process, but we can absolutely point you in the right direction if you want to send us an email about that.
Yeah.
Okay. A question. How do we prove our content is indexed on Google?
Yeah, I can take that question. So if you're concerned about whether your content's indexed on Google or not, what you can do is take the headline of a story, put it into quotation marks, and search that headline with those exact search terms. And if it comes up, then we would say that piece of content is indexed by Google. If it doesn't come up, but there's a link to your website as a whole, I would say that doesn't count as being indexed on Google. So what we would need is that we're able to access the specific news story through Google.
And if you're asking about the proof and the portal, the verification team will verify that. So essentially,
you'll be submitting all of the links in the 3-week period in 2024. And so we, if you cannot find links to your news articles, then if you don't have anything to submit, then you won't be able to submit a complete application. There's a question about general interest news. So is independent news stories about a specific community, for example, a church community, considered industry news, and is it eligible? So this is this question about industry specific. Gabrielle, you gave some examples earlier, but maybe just a little bit more about what's considered specific to an industry and what's considered general interest.
Yeah. So industry specific would be, for example, by and for an industry. So more of a like a B2B kind of, like, for example, the magazine of architects, right? Who are mostly architects, right, for this magazine, and the content is made for the architects. So it's not for a broader audience. But you can have a publication that focuses on a topic, but that's made, in a kind of summary way for a broader audience. I don't know if this answers, but that would be my...
And I think if anyone has more questions about that, you can feel free to email us about it. We want to make sure that everyone has all the info before they apply on September 9th.
Totally.
Okay, so another question. So there seems to be a lot of questions about social media. So if someone's role is only social media and engagement, they wouldn't be eligible.
Exactly.
But if there's a journalist who's producing original content and also has to do some social media, as many journalists do, then would they be needing to separate out those hours?
They would, yes.
So I can answer that question. If you go to our CJC payment calculation policy for publishers, you see that we have a bunch of different examples of how to count your hours. And so if you go into the first example, that employee has to spend 75% of their time engaged in the production of original news content. And then we, at the bottom of the policy, have the list of, so you see here, they have to spend 75% of their time engaged in the production of original news content. And then at the bottom of the policy, there's a list of the tasks that count as the production of original news content. So if you spend 25% of your time doing social media, that's fine. You can count that as one. Gabrielle, if you just want to go back a slide, you can kind of see it's proportional. So if you have employee that's only employed for part of the year, but 75% of their time is on the production of original news content, then they could count for a different proportion of the head count. So you could count like 0.25 of that person, or that person's role would only count as 0.25 of the eligible newsroom employees. And of those hours, they only have to spend 75% of their time on producing original written news content. So if they're doing, let's see, they're working 13 hours a week. Or no, sorry, that's an example. So here, this is an employee who worked 26 hours a week for 2.5 months. So it sounds like probably someone who came and worked almost full time for the summer. And 75% of those hours were spent on tasks that are listed in the policy, then they can get counted as 0.25.
Right. And another question about independent contributors who may or may not be journalists. Can they qualify as producing news content even when it's handled by journalist editors? And maybe Laura, you can say something about this question of where QCGO and CJC land on this question of who's producing the news, and is there a link with who's overseeing it?
And do you mind just sharing the name of the person who asked the question?
It's anonymous.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this one between QCGO and CJC.
That's right. Yeah.
Differing opinions about whether commentary from independent contributors who may or not be journalists qualify as news content. Yeah, so I think for this one, we need to, like, we're just gonna stick to the CJC policy as we have it. And essentially, if there is a commentary that includes original research and that it's original news content, then that would be counted. But if it's just opinion and doesn't include, so this is in our policy,
Yeah.
you'll see it under point 2 in the list of tasks that do not qualify as original news production. So if your commentary is just expressing personal viewpoints with no original news content, then we wouldn't consider it to be eligible.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's a difference there with QCGO, but I think that's that's
also if they're contributors, meaning probably freelancers or not on the payroll, well, they're also not eligible. So
That's right. So question, we publish 4 newspapers under one company name. Do we use the company name for the application or the name of one of our newspapers?
Yeah. So the application would be with the company name, and then each newspaper is considered a news outlet.
yeah, if it's the company that issues the T4, we always come back to that, right?
Yeah.
If it has to be the company that pays the employees. So
Okay. Stories published online in 2024 are now behind a paywall. Do we need to provide full access to the CJC? Yes, we
yes,
do need to be able to access it. Exactly.
there will be a field in the portal where you can put your access so that we can access it.
Okay. Let's see. What about news personalities who provide commentary on the news of the day, but also give their opinions live on air?
Well, again, it depends what kind of news they're doing. If they're doing, eligible task while doing this. So, if we come back to the slide here, so if in the midst of doing that, they're doing news gathering, story development, they're doing interviews, for example, and if they are on the payroll, then it might be, but as you see also in the tasks that do not qualify as original news production is also expression of personal viewpoints. So you really have to figure out if they're doing related tasks to news production.
And I'm just going to jump in again to say that you can also remember that it means that 75% of their tasks have to be dedicated to the production of original news content. So if 50% of their task is expressing personal viewpoints and 50% of their task is original news content, then they wouldn't count. But if 75% of their task is doing research, interviews, normal journalism work, then you can count their time in your head count and your eligible employees.
Okay. Will we provide a template for the calculations?
A template, yes, I mean it's in the portal and it's also in our policy. So the slides that I show are in the resource part of our website, so you can really easily find it, and you have all the templates and the calculation there.
And what'll be helpful is when you're filling out the portal, you'll be able to, it'll automatically calculate for you. So you'll see how many total employees you have.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question about third language publications. So there's no barriers at all to submitting your content in a language that's not English or French. As Gabrielle said, you're just uploading your content in a way that can be read by a verifier working in English or French. But you're absolutely encouraged to apply. There's no reason not to, as long as you submit the other criteria of 2 employees, if you're not QCGO, and producing original news. So there's a question about the change for the publication of payments calculation. Is the change now or more predominantly based on T4 income of the employee amount as a leading factor in the calculation rather than hours worked? So I think this is about the change that we're no longer looking at how many hours, but we're looking at the number of employees, the shift from year 1 to year 2. So maybe just a little bit more, if I'm understanding the question properly, does that make journalist hours not equal across the country? I think this question is really trying to get more deeply into that shift and how that works. And that's from Sarah Holmes, Laura, if you want to look at that.
Yeah. Okay, so the change is now we're not basing it on T4 income of the employee. We're basing it on the number of employees. So it's the number of eligible employees. And in the payment calculation policy, you can find detailed instructions on how to count your eligible employees. And so basically it's the number of employees that you have on payroll over the course of the year. And so and the framework shows you how to count an employee who only worked part of the year or who only worked part-time. And so we're not using their income at all in our calculation. It's just the number of employees on payroll. And we had to fit it into some criteria so that it was easy for us to do the calculations and for us to verify the number of employees that you're claiming. So that's why we've broken it down into 1 employee, 0.75, 0.5, and 0.25. So those are kind of the buckets that you can count your employees in.
Okay. And then there's another question about that. So if somebody works longer than 35 hours, will they not be compensated for those additional hours?
That's right. If you work longer than 35 hours, you will not receive more funds for that. It's really just a proxy for us to understand how big your newsroom is rather than a one-to-one compensation for the number of hours that are worked.
And okay, I think we've got through most of them. Yes, so I think that's most of the questions. If there's anything that we didn't get to, oh, how do you determine how much is paid per employee? So yeah, I'll let you guys take that.
Yeah, I was gonna say again, it's gonna depend on how many news businesses apply, how many dispute if they're ineligible. Like Laura said, if you want a project, you can assume that it's gonna be around the same amount of year 1, but it might be a little more, hopefully. But yeah, so we can't really know for now. Oh. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any indication as to how many years this funding will be available going forward? So the Google got an exemption from the CRTC. So this is for 5 years that we have the agreement with Google to administer the funding. So we're currently almost at the end of administering year 1 of the 100 million. We're going to be administering year 2 starting September 9th, administering it through to December, and then doing the payments for year 2 in early 2026, in winter 2026. And then there will be 3 more rounds after that, so every year. And we'll always be looking at the previous year of news production. Could you please walk through an example of how to calculate an FTE of less than 1? I think the easiest way is to really look at that example from the payment calculation policy on our website, but Gabrielle, you could maybe pull that slide up again.
Exactly, sure.
Yeah, I can walk us through that. I think that's a great question.
Okay. So here we have it.
Okay. Okay, and then I think this person specifically asked for someone who was less than 1. So if you can go to the next slide.
Sorry. It's probably the other one too, right here. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is so say you have someone who's working in your newsroom, and they only work 8 hours a week, and then they take 4 months of the year off. I don't know, maybe they have a summer job that they leave for, but 8 months of the year they're there and they're helping you with various tasks in your newsroom. They do the layout or they are your copy editor, and so then you start here and you make sure, okay, was this person employed by the organization in 2024? They have to be employed in 2024. Did they receive a T4 tax slip? Like, are they on your payroll? So if both of those are true, then you go on to the next step. Was 75% of their time engaged in the production of original written news content? So what I would do is go, look at their job description of the tasks that they complete in the day-to-day, and are 75% of their tasks, is 75% of their time spent on tasks that are dedicated to the production of original news content. So, this person works 8 hours a week, so that probably means that like 7 of their hours need to be spent on tasks that are dedicated to the production of original news content. And then in the policy, you can find, it's in section C, and it says, we have a full list of tasks that qualify as original news production, and it's a fairly detailed list. So this could involve research, contacting sources, interviews, data collection, coming up with newsworthy stories, determining the angle and the focus of the story. It's really a detailed list, and I'll let you guys go through that. But then if we can go back to the example, and you've checked that 75% of their time is spent on tasks that are on that list, and then you make sure that they were employed for a minimum of 10 weeks in a row, and that they worked at least 26 hours a week, or they were employed for a minimum of 32 weeks of the year and they worked a minimum of 8 hours a week. So if someone works fewer than 8 hours a week, so it's like they're only working 4 hours a week for you, then even if they work 4 hours a week for the whole year, they wouldn't count. They wouldn't be counted at all. But if they work 8 hours a week or more, and 32 weeks in a row, then they would count. Or if you have someone who only works 10 weeks in a row, but they're working 26 hours a week, then you could count them. So yeah, I hope that helps. I think it's probably something that you'll need to look through for each of your different employees, and this will help you make your calculation.
And maybe I'll just say a note, because I know it's a big change, but essentially we got a lot of feedback on how year 1 was administered. And the majority of the feedback was that the publishing sector would like to align more closely with the way that QCGO is administered in terms of going by head count, because QCGOs are needing to submit their full-time equivalent employees to the Canada Revenue Agency anyways. So that was the feedback that we got. We're going to continue to be consulting every year with how applicants are experiencing the process. So there's lots of time to feed into how this goes. But yeah, that's the logic for the switch. And there's a question here. Can you have a mix of broadcast and print employees?
You can, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah. So basically in your application, if your news business is a broadcaster, if any part of your news business involves a radio station or broadcasting over the air or broadcasting distribution service like cable TV, then your whole news business is counted as a broadcaster. And that's on the level of incorporation. So if you have separate incorporated entities and one is all print, they can apply as a separate news business. But if you have one incorporated entity that owns a radio station, a print outlet, and online outlet, that would mean that they are all broadcasters. And so all those employees would be counted as broadcasters. And there's a separate broadcasting workshop that if you think you might be a broadcaster, it'd be really important to attend that one, because our publisher and our broadcaster councils are working on different approaches that are more tailored to the industry. And so the way that you count hours, if you're a broadcaster or a publisher, is a bit different. And that's really important to be careful around.
And I have a question about payment. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something else there, Laura?
Nope, that's great.
Okay. So payment. So the payment for the compensation for the news that you produced in 2024, the volume of news that you produced, the compensation for that, which is year 2. So that's the portal that's opening September 9th for non-Indigenous applicants and September 16th for Indigenous applicants. The payment for that is in winter 2026. So we're going to be administering that throughout fall 2025, and payment will be in winter 2026. Okay, is the application portal already open? No, it opens for non-Indigenous applicants on September 9th. So on our website, the portal will be available to click on and to apply September 9th. Okay, it's a question about lifestyle publishers. And I think this is a great question because it's sort of talking about, this question around what is the news outlet? And maybe Laura, you can talk a bit about there's the publisher, so the newspaper, and then the news outlet, like the section that's producing news. Maybe just a note on that.
Yeah. So if you have a news business that has an online publication and one part of your publication is dedicated to news, then you can submit that as the news outlet. But I think I saw this question about lifestyle publications. It's still required that the majority of your content is public interest news. And so that's why we need everyone to submit one link per news item, is because we're going to be going through and assessing if the majority of your content is focused on news. And the change from last year is that we're just looking at the news outlet. So if there's a section of your website that's focused on news, you can submit all the news that was produced over that 3-week period from that section of your publication.
Okay, I think that we've covered most of the questions. So on our website, you can see about us, you can see our team, and you can email if there's a question directly about how the program is running. You can email Laura. If you have a question about how, as someone in the sector, you're engaging with the CJC, you have questions that are specific to how you run your news business, you can speak to Gabrielle. Anything about the CJC's general operations, you can speak to me. And yeah, I'll leave it. If there's anyone who feels that there's a question that we didn't cover, please feel free to type it into the bottom. And yeah, there seem to be questions about the formula. So what we can say is that you should really go by the information we have in the payment calculation policy. I really encourage everyone to read that through before applying, and then please feel free to ask us for any questions. The portal will be open from September 9th to October 3rd for non-Indigenous applicants, and from September 16th to October 16th for Indigenous applicants. So you will also have quite a bit of time to start apply. You could save your progress and continue later. We're trying to make this as user-friendly as possible. You can email us with questions, you can call. Will Q&As from the others be reported back on the site? So we're going to make the recording available. We'll see if we're able to capture all the questions. I think what we'll do is you'll see on our website, we have frequently asked questions. And so if there's a question that was coming up a lot that we realized after we didn't have a chance to get to, then we'll add that to one of the frequently asked questions with the answer. So it'll be easy to access. And I think that, I encourage everyone with specific questions about calculation to have a look at that policy, read it through, and then ask us if you have any other questions about it, because it should be answered in that document. I'm just trying to see if there's anything we missed. There's one that I think is a good one. So we received QCJO status in the fall of 2024. How will this affect our submission process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because we're looking at 2024 from January 1st till December 31st, you'll need to apply as a producer of news content of public interest. And so you'll go through the same verification process as producers of news content of public interest, but there is a section in the form where you can note that you have applied and that you did receive approval, and that'll for sure be taken into consideration when we're verifying your content. And then, yeah, of course, next year the process will be really streamlined for you, but because it's retroactive, we have to assess the content as well.
Okay. Okay. I think that's the bulk of the questions. There's one about, can you claim half of an employee's time? So if an employee, half of their work is qualified under our list and half is unqualified, do they claim that as one FTE, for example?
No, you can't. The employee has to spend 75% of their time on tasks dedicated to the production of original news content. It's really trying to focus on the roles in your organization that are journalistic roles.
And are QCJOs going to be, are they not required to submit the 3-week news sample?
They're not.
But they still need to provide links so that we can verify that your content is available on Google. So we do need to be able to check, because there are QCJO organizations who don't publish online, or their online publications aren't available on Google.
Oh, yeah.
So it won't be the same level of verification as if you're a producer of news content of public interest, but we still do need all those links.
And there's another good question. So say a major publication like Globe and Mail has a section report on business. Would those journalists be considered eligible employees reporting on news of general interest if they're working on a section that's on a specific interest like business?
They are. Being that the Globe and Mail is a general interest publication in general, so it's not made like I said, like a scientific magazine, for example, that's doing science for a broader audience and a general audience would be eligible. So it's the same thing with, like, journalists can have a beat, they can focus on a specific topic. It's just that they're doing it for a general audience within their publication.
Okay. Oh, there's one more. There's a primarily digital news content publisher that also produces a quarterly print magazine under the same name. Are they considered one outlet or two? Did I ask that one already? I did.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Um, okay, great. All right. I think that's it. Oh, will the verification still be payroll summaries? I think that's a question about the process that Ernst and Young does in order to verify the hours. So they're asking for different types of information. At the base, they're asking for information on payroll, and then they're also going to be looking at the eligible hours.
And they
So I
have
think-
provided, yeah, they have provided me or Sanyang with a list of different documents that you can submit that are not T4. So I invite you to contact me if you want the list by email.
And I think that's one of the things that we might probably put on our website as a frequently asked question, because it did come up. What are the other types of proof other than T4? So we'll make that public as well.
Yes.
And one last question here. So in the 3-week period, we want all the links, not just that the Laura, I see you're typing the answer to that. Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
That's right. Yeah. You understood it perfectly, Jocelyn. That's right. We want all the links, not just the news links.
Okay. And then there's another question in year 1, hours for employees in the design department counted towards the total. Is that still the case for year 2? So again, I encourage you to look at the eligible and ineligible tasks that's in the payment calculation policy for publishers. So it should be clear there where the hours are allowed to be towards the production of original news. So I think we've got to mostly everything. Yes. So one last question. So you want every news link we publish over 3 weeks up to a maximum of 100 links. So the limit of the 3 weeks or the 100 links. So
yeah,
maybe
that's
Laura, you
right.
can
So
clarify.
yeah. So if over 3 weeks you only produce 50 links of content, no problem. That's great. Makes it easier. If over a 3-week period you're producing more than 100 links of content, then we'll just say we'll cut off at 100 links. And because it's too intensive to verify more than that. So yeah,
And
whichever comes first.
I think all those details and everything will be much more clear once the portal opens, because the portal is it's really straightforward. You'll know exactly how and what to submit. So I think it will really help you to figure it out.
And there's a last question. Is it 100 links per publication? So it's per outlet. So each outlet is submitting the news it produced over a 3-week period. So you could have one news business that owns multiple outlets. Every outlet is submitting all their news over the 3-week period. And Laura, maybe you can just speak to, are they including links of news produced by freelancers as well as their employees?
We just want to see, we want to get a sense of how much news your publication is producing overall. And so it's not necessary to separate whether they're produced by an employee or freelancer. It's just all the news that your publication produces over that 3-week period. And that's all you need to do.
Again, it's not linked to the hours. It's really linked, it's another verification step, your content. So it's not related to who does so it's the amount to see if you are doing mostly general interest news.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for participating. We're here to support your process this year, and we'll make this session available online. So if anyone wants to refer to any information or send this to someone who wasn't able to attend, you'll be able to do so. We'll have the link up on our website. Okay, well, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Okay.